here we go. Samantha Busch, I'm so excited to be doing this with you. Thank you for coming on my podcast. We have talked about doing this, about you possibly starting a podcast. You are such a wealth of knowledge, such a fun person to talk to. Every time I see you in person, we could talk all day long. And so I know that if you ever started your own podcast, it would be a massive success. You would thrive.
Well, thank you. You've inspired me.
When I tell you that I have not put this book down all day, I read it when it first came out. I ordered it, I read it, and I'm going through and like taking notes that I wanted to talk to you about. But reading it back now too, now that I've had my own kids, and well, when did you come out with this book? It was maybe
It was
after I had
it
Captain.
was right during COVID, so like
Yeah,
around 2020, 2021. Because
yeah.
I was one of the only people that was enjoying lockdown because it forced me to get my stuff done because there was no other distraction. So for me, it
Yes.
helped.
Yeah, seriously, that you were busy, and it definitely is such a good read. I mean, anyone that hasn't read Fighting Infertility, this is so good. I laugh out loud and cry within pages of each other. Like, it's
Oh, thank
truly
you.
so good, Sam. Like,
Thank
so
you.
good. You're a very good writer. I mean, you just tug at the heartstrings and make, I mean, it's so sweet and it's so funny. Um One thing that I know is kind of, maybe this is kind of corny, but like I wanted to read this, what you had wrote to your husband. To my husband, thank you for letting me talk about your sperm and our sex life to the world as casually as ordering fast food. And I just thought
And
that was so
that it's really funny because I have no problem like oversharing everything, but Kyle is so reserved that there was parts in this book that I had to be like, "Hey, are you cool with this? Like, we're gonna go here." But he was super supportive of it, and he also understands that like by us telling our story and other males understanding that like, look, if Kyle went through this, like it's a very normal thing because a lot of people don't know that 1/3 of the time that a couple is experiencing infertility, it's a woman factor, but another third of the time it's male factor. And so that's something that's just not as talked about. And I really wanted to showcase that in the book so that, I think women like internalize it and it's hard because, God created you to have children. But I think there's such a mental health aspect with men too that gets overlooked.
absolutely. Reading through that, I was growing so much um, just empathy and respect for both you and Kyle, that is something so hard that you guys have had to go through, and I mean, I'm only now to the point in this book when I was flipping back through it today where you're going into the hospital when he had gotten in that crash in Daytona. But to what people don't understand is they get one little snippet of your guys' life and they think maybe, oh my gosh, I can't believe he, broke his legs, had to go through that surgery, had all of that happen. None of us knew and could grasp the concept that you guys had been going through such an intense journey for the year and a half prior to that. And so I just have so much respect for you guys. Well, what I was saying before we kind of cut off is I was saying you guys had gone through so much in the year and a half prior to him then getting in that crash. And I just have so much respect for you guys. And I know you had been through such a journey. And then here you are again at the bottom of a giant hill to climb because it got so much harder even, or it continued to be a very difficult journey for you guys when then you were bringing a baby home and everything. So before we get to talking a little bit about your fertility journey and everything that you've done there, I want to back up and talk about Sam, where you were born and raised, what you were like as a kid. Just tell me a little bit about you. I love that you went to Purdue and that you were an Alpha Phi because we're sorority sisters. And I just love that. We didn't go to the same school, but it feels like we're sisters. But anyway, tell me a little bit about you and your upbringing, where you're from, what kind of stuff you were into as a kid, and then
Yeah.
we'll get into bring us up to
Well, let's
speed
see.
to today. Oh.
So I grew up in Northwest Indiana, but I say Chicago because we grew up like 5 minutes from the Illinois border, which is why Kyle and I ended up getting married in Chicago because all my aunts and uncles and cousins still live out there. My mom was a nurse. My dad was in construction. I have one brother who's 7 years younger than me, and I say that because it was this joke. So Kurt is 7 years older than Kyle. I'm 7 years older than my brother. And we always said, we're like, we do not want our kids to be that far apart. And God laughed at that. And they are almost 7 years apart to the day, 1 week off.
That's
So,
so
yeah, it just happened like that. And I don't know. I mean, I was a very girly girl, which I reference because when it came to meeting Kyle, I had no idea about racing. As you mentioned, I went to Purdue, I was in a sorority. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about NASCAR, and so it's really funny now because it's like I'm so immersed in it, not only with Kyle and being on the road for so long, but now with Brexton. And then on top of it, just a couple nights ago, Lennox was like, I want to race. She calls Brexton Bubba. And she's like, I want to race like Bubba. I want to race like Bubba. And so we let her test at Millbridge too. So I'm like, wow, wow.
yes, you're so immersed in it now. But what
Yeah.
was your like childhood dreams and passions? Like is this where you ever saw your life going? And before you and Kyle started dating, you were pursuing your psychology degree at Purdue, and what did you envision your next 10 years were going to look like? And then how have you adapted to what it is now?
Yeah, definitely never saw this in the future. Yeah, worked really hard at school. I have my undergrad in regular psychology, and then I went on to get my master's in industrial organizational psychology, which is kind of like a business psych, which was really cool when we had Kyle Busch Motorsports because a lot of what I did was like person, organization, fit, and different things. So it was kind of fun to get to use it in a way there. But yeah, I mean, where I grew up, all my aunts and uncles, all my family, we all lived really close. So I had just always imagined that I would have probably stayed in Northwest Indiana or Chicago, even though I absolutely hate snow and winter more than anything. Like, I hate it so much. People are always like, don't you miss it? I'm like, never. When it snows here and people are so excited and they go outside, I'm like, oh, we have to go out in the snow. But like I suck it up for the kids, but there is nothing about snow that I find enjoyable after living in it that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never imagined being out in North Carolina. But I love it out here. I really do. And obviously, the kids love it out here and they know no different. But when we travel, they still always want to come back home. I think the only other place that Kyle and I and the family could see each other at like is in Arizona maybe because he sometimes misses like that desert West Coast. But Vegas is not in my cards.
Yeah.
But we always agree that Arizona could be fun one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we always love Arizona too. So you guys started, you were at a race in Chicago, right? Is that right? How you guys met?
In
And then
Indy, I was
in Indy.
working.
Right, right. You were working and you guys got to talking, and it was just kind of a instant, you guys had such chemistry you could just talk for hours, right?
No, not at all. So here's what happened. So Kyle now, this many years later, because we met, I had just turned 21 and I'm 38 now. So this is like a very long time ago. And I mean, I think the general public can see I'm very bubbly and talkative, and Kyle, especially back then, was a little more reserved. And so I had been working this line and like getting people hyped up to go for basically like pace car rides. And the line ended, and now I know it was a PR girl, but his PR girl at the time was like, "Hey, do you want to go for a ride?" And I'm all 21, and I'm like, "Heck yeah!" Plus, not to mention, it's 1,000 degrees out here. So I get in the car with this guy. He's wearing a t-shirt. Like, we're not in a race car. We're wearing the same shirt. So I knew nothing about racing. This was my first time ever at a racetrack. And so I'm just kind of like, "Hey, da da da, this is so cool. Like, where are you from?" Like, on and on. We got 2 or 3 laps together. It was no more than 2 minutes. But in that time, a bunch of us because I assumed he was doing a promo like I was, a
Yeah.
bunch of us promo people were going to go out to the bars that night and like hang out. And then we were all going to come into work again the next day. And so he was like, "Where do you go to school?" Like, kind of chatting. And so I just threw it out there because I thought he was cute. I'm like, "You should come to the bars with us. Like, it'll be really fun." And he was like, "Yeah, I have something tonight." And I'm like, "Mhm. Okay, all right, read that one wrong." And so I'm like, "Okay," like the ride, the 2, 3 laps are over. I'm like, "Okay, nice meeting you. Bye." And then that same person comes up, and it's really funny. She's still at the track. Her name's Amy. She was always Jimmy Johnson's PR girl for forever. Amy
Okay.
Walsh. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
So yeah, like we had her at our wedding because we're like, "Amy, this is because of you."
Yes.
So she came over and she's like, "Oh, he wants your number." And I'm like, "I don't think he does, but whatever. If you all want to come out with us later, like, have fun." And then ended up figuring out like who he was, what he did, because he was texting. He's like, "I have the truck race." So, this is before Instagram and all that. So my girlfriends and I are like Googling and like
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. I think Facebook had just come out. Like, that's how long ago this was. And it was still Facebook, like where you had to have your college email to get Facebook. Do you remember? No,
Yes.
you're too young, but that's how old we are. So anyways, figured out like who he was, and like everything about him was like rowdy and bad boy. And I was like, "Well, this is gonna be a disaster." No. And so we just talked on the phone because there was no texting, and we talked on the phone for 4 months until we went on our first date. Because I was like, I just assumed. I mean, you were in a sorority, you get it. I had dated frat boys. They were
Yeah.
not some of the best boyfriends. And so
Yes.
when you see a guy that's like rowdy and an athlete, I was like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, we talked on the phone for 4 months. He was like super duper sweet, won me over. He had 2 little Westie dogs, and we just started kind of casually dating. And then I had to finish an entire year of school. So he would come in and out at school and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool.
That is so cute. So this book is so funny because it talks about all of that, and that's why I love bringing that up. Like it was, because that first encounter you guys had in the car was just bizarre and not like but so funny how you guys you have a very similar sort of story as Ty and I was in college and we started dating, but we mostly just talked over the phone, and he would come to me, and it was just kind of that same thing. And then I moved out here kind of like you did,
Yep.
and you talk about it being really lonely, and like it was, gosh, it was so hard, and you really have to create a life for yourself. And you have certainly done that. I know that it's taken years, but I mean, you are just a force to be reckoned with your blog, but then your store and everything that you've done there. But you guys had KBM. I mean, you've done a little bit of everything with your
Yeah.
energy drink. I mean, you have dabbled in so many things, and you are clearly a jack of all trades. So, um, it's just been really cool to witness. But what I want to ask you is a little bit more about your book and everything. You guys started your fertility journey, and there have been so many people. I put a little blurb on Instagram of, what should I ask Samantha? And the response was overwhelming of the people just wanting to ask you about fertility. Thank you for what you've done for fertility. Thank you for what you've done to help people through that. But anyway, with this book and everything, it's been really, you bear it all. You really bear it all in the book, and you talk about the taboo topics, or and they're, you make them funny, and but I just want to kind of talk about that. Anyone that hasn't read it and doesn't know your story, will you sort of catch everybody up to speed? You decide you want to start a family and you're a planner and things became very difficult. And anyway, can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, I mean, whew, it would take
I know.
a long time, but I'll give the overview. So, Kyle and I, we got married young. We had been married a couple years, and I'm sure, like you saw, everybody in NASCAR and all of our friends were starting to have kids, and we're like, okay, like I think we're ready. He was established in his career. We had just found like a really good rhythm together as husband and wife, and we had traveled, and we're like, let's do it. And so, it's fun and it's exciting, and you've I was on birth control for a very long time. So I'm like, okay, a couple months go by, no big deal. A couple more months, okay, I've read about this, not a big deal. And then it just keeps going and going and going. And you start getting into this like black hole of, okay, what should I eat and what supplements? Why isn't this working? And the issue for me at the time, I was all of like 25 or 26. And so, I made an appointment with my OBGYN, and it was not on her fault, but just dismissive. It was, you're so young, just give it
Hmm.
time, don't worry. So then, a year plus goes by and we're doing the ovulation kits, and it's isolating and it's upsetting. It's no longer this like fun, intimate, exciting time in your life. It's very stressful. It's, causing arguments. It's just, it got hard. And so go back to the OBGYN, and they finally start doing some testing, and they're like, oh, you have PCOS. We're going to put you on this medication called Clomid. It should help with, being able to have a mature egg that releases, and everything should be fine. Never once, never once said, we should test Kyle. That was just
Hmm.
not a thing really back then. It was always kind of a woman issue. So go on 5 rounds of Clomid, which if anybody out there is listening, you turn into an absolute crazy person. Like Clomid is one of the hardest medications to be on. It is just, you have rage, you have tears, like anything can set you off at any moment. So after about 5 rounds of that, with no success, we went back to the OBGYN. And again, at the time, I had no idea that you didn't need a referral to go to a reproductive endocrinologist or a fertility clinic. And so we finally went there. And one of the first questions they asked, they said, okay, well, where's your husband's testing? And we were like, no, it's a me issue. And they're like, well, let's just check. And so they found out that he had male factor as well. And so with that, we weren't able to try IUI. We actually were going to go right to IVF with a procedure called ICSI, where because of his lower sperm count and motility, and that they would actually have to like physically take the sperm and put it in the egg, where a lot of
Hmm.
times, they just let them do their thing naturally. Um, so finding all that was like super overwhelming, but for both Kyle and I, and as you mentioned before, we have done a lot of businesses. Like we thrive off of each other and like being planners and doers together. And so for us, it was scary and overwhelming because it was something new, but at the same time, I was like, okay, we have something we can do. So, it was more of a comfort
Right.
than
You guys like having a task. Like you're like, okay,
yes.
give me a to-do list. Let's tackle it. Yeah.
Yes, we are very goal-oriented people. So for us, it was like, okay, great. And so we went through the first round, and everything turned out amazing. And we had Brexton, and as you had mentioned earlier, that was Kyle got hurt at the Xfinity race in Daytona. I was 28 weeks pregnant. He recovered for 11 weeks. He went back racing May 16th, and I had Brexton May 18th, and we never looked
Unbelievable.
back.
Yeah.
um we just didn't check up. I was so scared that something was going to happen again to
Yeah.
him. So Brexton was 7 days old, and we went on the road, and we never checked up.
Yeah.
To this day we haven't checked
Yeah.
up. And so then from there, social media was a bigger thing at that time. And so once Brexton was probably around the age Lennox is now, like he was potty trained, we're like, okay, let's start trying for number two. And since I conceived the first round and had a natural pregnancy, all that stuff, they were like, you're golden. Your
Yeah.
embryos are high quality. You're still like everything's good. Everything's great. And so we decided, because we had started the Bundle of Joy Fund at that point. And so we're like, we've been doing these grants and helping people pay for their IVF cycles and whatnot, but we should really be more advocates in this space and let people in on what they're going to go through, because it is an
Yeah.
overwhelming process. And my thought was, okay, if I can bring people along in real time on my journey, then when they go through theirs, it's not going to be as scary because they're going to know what's to come. So we did
Right.
all that, and we did a transfer, and I was pregnant, and we were like, okay, perfect. And everybody knew, right? Like everybody knew the timeline
Hmm.
and everything. And so we announced that we were pregnant because we had brought people on this journey.
Right. People suspected you'd be pregnant. Yeah. If everything
It-
was working.
yeah. Yeah. And so, we told people right away. And then as I get into a lot in the book, we had a miscarriage out of nowhere. And it was, I still don't have words for it. Just shocking, devastating, gut wrenching, just a moment of your life that is still so vividly clear to this day, even though it was so many years ago. And so that was really hard. And then, I discuss in the book, it was hard to deal with a miscarriage. And then we went into having a very hard time in our marriage. Which, as you know, when you're out in public is even worse with
Yeah.
the rumor mill. Um, it was a really ugly time. And 2019 was just a shit year. Like I have no other words to describe it. It was just a horrific year.
Yeah.
But we fought through it.
Hmm.
We went to therapy. We did all the things.
That's
And then we
beautiful.
got into a spot where we're like, okay, yeah, I mean, I could get into it more, but like marriage is work, and anybody that tells you that it should be easy, it's
Yeah.
not always easy. It's not always rainbows and butterflies, and you have to be willing to fight to make
Yeah.
it better.
Well, and
Um,
also I want to you to carry on, but I just want to pause you right there and tell you we had an extremely similar shit year of 2019. We had a miscarriage as well at that same time. And it was right after you guys had. I remember talking about it, I believe, right? I don't know, but I remember I had miscarried and you had shared that. And then you were so sweet to me, coming up to me to talk about it in Daytona. And it was just really rough and upsetting. And you feel like your body's kind of failed you and you don't get it. It's just heartbreaking no matter what the stage. If it's, if you're 6 weeks, if you're 16 weeks, obviously, um there are different levels of that are obviously extremely hard, but it was really hard on our marriage. We were going through a really hard time in our marriage. We thought maybe having a baby would be like finally, like we're healed. Well, like marriage is a fight, like you have to fight for your marriage. And we did as well. We went to therapy and did so many things at that point in time in our lives. And obviously there's more to it. Like you say, we could get into it more. That's a whole other podcast, but it's just
yeah.
beautiful. And I want to commend you that I know that hard, and I think it's beautiful that you guys have decided to fight for your marriage and your kids, and you guys are better for it. Like, what are your thoughts? I mean, are you grateful? Is there a part of you that's grateful for all of these hard times you've gone through to have what you have now? I mean,
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I always say I wouldn't change our fertility journey for anything, because it allows us to have the Bundle of Joy Fund, and it allows us to have that empathy and that firsthand knowledge of what other couples go through. Um, do I still look back on 2019 with like slight PTSD sometimes? Yeah, I mean, it was awful. And you get it. Like, yes, your marriage is stronger. Yes, you as a person are stronger, but like, man, that was hard. Like that was some of the hardest times as like a woman, as a mother, and you get it too. Like you still have to be a mother during all that. And I don't think that's something like people don't think about. Like, you and your husband are fighting nonstop and you are so disappointed in yourself and in your body and in who you are that you lost that baby, even though, yes, I know it wasn't my fault, but you're like having this like hatred towards yourself, and then you're fighting with your husband, and then you're putting on this whole mask so that you could be this perfect mom and like channel all your energy into that, because you're like, well, I can't fuck that up too, like that's how I really felt. And
Yeah.
it's so hard. And I think that's where, a lot of people struggle because it's a lot of emotions. And as somebody who has like a psychology background, I'm like, go to counseling because
Yeah.
you need that third party person to just
Yeah.
help you guys get out of that spiral. But yeah, I mean, now it's great. We have tools when we like notice that we're going to get into like a pattern of something. It's like, okay, wait, hold on, like remember what the therapist said. And still sometimes being able to have that vulnerability to be like, hey, I think we need to go see someone together, or like I think I need to go see
Yeah.
someone right now, and being comfortable like doing that together.
I think that's such a beautiful statement and a really good advice. I am a huge advocate for therapy, for marriage counseling. I am so grateful for our therapist that I still see now. I mean, I talk to her once, was once a week. Now we're kind of like to once a month ish. But yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for that. And anybody that feels like they're too proud to do that, like what was Kyle's thoughts? Because for a while there too, Ty, when we were going through a really hard time in our marriage, Ty was apprehensive at first to do therapy because he's just like that's not his thing. It wasn't, and then something clicked. It was actually our pastor friend Judah Smith. He said how him and his wife go to therapy, and he was just like, lean not on your own understanding, like I don't want to ever be the guy that thinks I know everything. And so that was like something that switched in Ty's mind, where because he was also like falling in love with Jesus at this point in our life, which was really beautiful, but like we were having such a hard time and I wanted to do therapy and all this stuff. But that was something that I think opened it up for him, that he was like, okay, I don't want to think I know everything and that I'm some pro. Like I do want to be the kind of person that's always learning and can always grow. And so, okay, yes, let's go to therapy. And it just like switched in his mind one day when I'm like, why was this stronghold on you? And then all of a sudden he was down to do it. And anyway, then it was life changing for us, truly. But was Kyle apprehensive of that? I mean, what were his thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like he knew that we were to the point that we weren't going to figure it out together. And again, I think where we thrive together is we have such a similar mindset about a lot of things. And we're both fixers and we're both doers. And
Yeah.
so for us, it was like, okay, we can't do this on our own. So we have to do something. And so that was good about him. He was like, yes, let's try it. Was every therapy session good? No, anybody who's been to marriage counseling can attest to that. But like he put in the work and he came, and that's like showing up is half the battle. And so
Yeah.
I think that's where it was really cool to see, is that because he is a doer like that and because we both are fixers, it was like, okay, well, we're going to try this, and
Yeah.
we at least have to try something. And so that was good. And then, from there we healed, we grew stronger, we decided to do another cycle. And that was a failed cycle. And so from there my clinic brought me in and they're like, "Hey, like we don't have a whole lot of embryos left. Would you guys ever consider a gestational carrier?" And we're like, "Oh, I don't know about that." And they're like, "We really think this will be your best bet." And so then I could do a whole nother podcast on trying to find a carrier. That is a whole
Yeah.
thing. But we found the perfect woman. Actually, she found us, and it was amazing, and it was God's plan and timing. We did a transfer, and it was a fail. And so from there, we were just devastated, and we ended up going to a second clinic all the way in Colorado because we just said, okay, something must be off. If two women who've had children, now the embryos are failing. And so, the second clinic was like, we don't think any of them are viable at this point. You need to start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So we started all over again with egg retrieval during the pandemic. That was fun. Flying back and forth to Colorado, like with Brexton during all the stuff. So that was a challenge in and of itself. And then we ended up, and it's really interesting. And I know a lot of people say, like, you do IVF for like what gender you want. And that's not the case. Like a lot of times, so we had our embryos genetically tested because I wanted to try to avoid a miscarriage. And obviously it's not foolproof and it's not a guarantee. But when they do the genetic testing, they're able to say, hey, this one would never make it. It's missing this many chromosomes or like this and that. But anyways, and I'll say it because people who don't have to go through IVF, a lot of times you're like, oh, I really want a boy or I really want a girl.
Yeah.
So we go through this whole second egg retrieval, and the nurse calls and she's like, hey, and she kind of sounded apprehensive. And I was like, tell me we got embryos. Like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, usually when you make like some embryos, a lot of times there's like both sexes. And she was like, and so she's like, I'm like, what is it? And she's like, because we want, obviously we had Brexton, and so I wanted a girl so bad. And she was
Yeah.
like, they're all girls. And
Yeah.
I was in the car. I'll never forget, we were in Daytona. We were driving to the condo, because I think that was in the middle of time. Remember, we couldn't stay at our own buses and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're at the condo, and I just remember like Kyle was driving, Brex is in the back seat, and I was just screaming because I was like, oh my gosh, like, how cool,
Right.
And so then they thought that since it was an embryo issue, not a me issue, that I could carry again. So we did a transfer, and that was the most insane transfer. So at first, my numbers, like, it showed I was pregnant, but then they weren't climbing, they weren't doubling. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, it's an ectopic pregnancy, but you have to go through like 3 more blood draws until we can basically like call it. So like I'm so disappointed. So I go to the first one, the second one, the third one. It's like a little bit climbing. Go to I can't remember if it's the fourth or fifth. Go to one more, and suddenly my numbers have more than doubled. And they're like, okay, hang on. So they're like, come back again. So I'm going for blood draws like every 48, 72 hours. So I go again. They've doubled again. They're like, okay, well, maybe it's delayed implantation.
Mm.
Okay, so keep going for blood work. It's going up. So around 6 weeks, a little past 6 weeks, they're like, it's probably too early, but we're going to bring you in for an ultrasound because we just need to see what's happening. So they bring me in, and we knew it was going to be early, but they were like, okay, we see like a faint, sac, and we think we see like the heartbeat, like you can't see much at
Yeah.
that point. They're
Yeah.
like, but we're going to say like, you're pregnant. Your numbers are looking good. We're not sure why it started off so weird. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So they bring me back again when I was like closer to 9 weeks. And then the tech's face, she was like, and her eyes got really big. And she was like, okay, hang on. And I'm like, oh gosh, like instantly think the worst, right? So then the midwife comes in, and they're both looking, and they're like, well, here's sack number 1 and here's sack number 2. And I was like, excuse me? Like, there's
Yeah.
like a 1% chance that your embryo will split. And so we thought we were going to have identical twin girls. And I was just over the moon. And they were like, look, they're both still really small, but like that's kind of to be expected if they split. Like, this makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense why your numbers were so weird. Like, you know, and I left out of there like, oh my gosh, we're having
Yeah.
twins. Like, you know, Kyle and I just sat in the car and looked at each other, and we were both kind of like excited, and then we were both also like, oh shit, like, whoa. So,
Not, yes.
you
Not at
know,
all what you expect. Yeah.
no, not in the least. And so we were so excited. And then we went back another, like, where I was around 12-ish weeks, and neither of them had survived. And unfortunately, I was growing two empty sacs, which was called a blighted ovum. So my body fully thought it was pregnant,
Mm.
and the sacs were growing, but there was no babies inside. Um, so they gave me a couple weeks because like you're still on progesterone and stuff like that, and they took me off all of that, and I was not miscarrying. And so I had to go in for a DNC, and I will never
Yeah.
forget. I was in Darlington because I had a DNC on Friday, and I refused to stay home and be alone. And
Yeah.
I was in Darlington with Brexton on Mother's Day in our bus. And remember, they would deliver you the red rose. Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember that?
Yeah.
And I stood up to answer the door to get the red rose and just like gushed blood on Mother's Day. And I was like, just
Yeah.
like lost it. I was like, I don't know if I could do this again.
Yeah.
And so
Gosh.
went, healed, did all that. Went back to our gestational carrier, asked her if she would do it again, and she did. She agreed, got
Mm.
pregnant, and we had Lennox. So
My gosh.
that is the 10-year overview in 30 minutes
Right.
of what it was.
Oh my gosh. What a journey. I mean, that's putting it lightly. It's been not uh it's not been easy. And you
No,
have had to go through a lot, and you have helped so much along the way. You have helped so many people along
thank
the way.
you.
One of the questions that someone asked me on Instagram about your journey is that they're going through it and really struggling and wanting to know how you keep the faith through it. Um, and where are you at with your faith? And how do you want to address that? I mean, what do you want to say to someone that's struggling in their fertility journey and in their faith journey?
That's a great question. So it's crazy how God works in your life and how he speaks to you, like especially in some of your hardest moments. And so before we even had Brexton, like when we were just going through it, I was in bed and I was crying, and I just was like, God, why? Why me? Why is this so hard? Like just this full breakdown, like angry, upset prayer to God of like, why do I have to go through this? Like, this is so hard. And clear as day, I just felt this where he was like, this is for other people. Like, I've got you. Don't worry. It's all going to be okay in the end, but I'm going to use you for other people. And I remember when we started the Bundle of Joy Fund, almost like word for word what I felt on my heart, one of the husbands wrote in his essay, and I mean almost word for word, and it just like stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, okay, like obviously this was for a reason. And to this day I feel like that. And it's just crazy throughout your journey how you have to go through the hard times sometimes to have that stronger connection. But now it's amazing. I just did a story on it on my Instagram the other day. So long story short, we picked up a number of clinics to fund with the Bundle of Joy Fund. We had some state grants, and unfortunately, it reverted back to like a couple years ago. So we lost that funding. We're reapplying, but this round, we were like, where are we going to get the money to cover? Because we used to have one clinic with two locations. Now we have three clinics with like 12 locations. And I just was like, God, you've got to provide. Like, I don't know what to do here. We're going to let down so many people. And people came from out of the woodwork. Like when I tell you, we had a Bundle of Joy recipient from 2017 who we had given $10,000 to. She emailed like the next morning and was like, hey, my husband and I, you helped us in 2017, but now we're in a great place. We'd like to give our $10,000 back to fund another couple.
Wow.
And then we met this amazing couple in St. Bart's, and she emailed me the next day, like after this other lady, and was like, hey, we're on vacation with our wonderful daughters, and we're just so blessed to have this family. We'd like to grant somebody. And then we
Oh,
had
that's so
this
cool.
other girl reach out, and her husband is a professional athlete. Her name's Ashley, and they have a foundation where they grant other foundations. And she was like, you know what? We have our kids. Your story just touched us. We're going to grant 3 couples. And it was just like,
Wow.
boom, boom, boom. And then, like, we're having this big charity concert in May. And suddenly we got 5 emails in one day that people were like, hey, we want to sponsor. And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
like all you can say is like, thank you, God. Cause I'm like, that was
Yeah.
not me. That was not my foundation director. Like, there's no other explanation except God was like, here you go. I've got it.
That is amazing. Wow. That is just so special. So, I mean, keeping the faith through all of that, would you say that prayer is obviously really important to you?
Yeah, I definitely, I found during my infertility journey, and honestly, and I've said it before, during our marriage troubles, I found Elevation Church, and that's just somewhere I really connected. I always joke, I think I like it so much because I'm the worst singer, and they have all their lights off, and it's so loud that I can sing at the top of my lungs and nobody can hear me. So I thoroughly enjoy that.
Yes.
And then I started reading Jesus Calling and really, really fell in love with that. Like, so much so that I read the adult version every day in the morning. And then I have the kid version for Brexton, which sometimes
Mhm.
I like the kid version more because I'm like,
You're like, that makes
oh,
so much sense. Yeah.
okay. But that really helped me through our journey. And then obviously finding support throughout the community. You have to connect with other people going
Yeah.
through it because I have very wonderful friends, but they didn't struggle with infertility, and so they'll listen to me talk all day long. But sometimes it's nice just to have people who know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And to not be afraid to just express that to the people around you and talk about what you're going through because people can't read your mind. And I think even with your friends, when you do have those vulnerable moments, even if they're not going through what you're going through, it's important to, you know, if you want to have the friend, you have to be the friend as well, So if you want someone to, connect with, you have to be vulnerable to them. And so, I mean, being able to put yourself out there and sort of just share your story to your friends is one thing. To write a whole book about it is another thing. It's so cool. It's just so funny too at moments, like really cute and funny, and then really heartfelt and beautiful. I know that you have to go.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, do you want to try and do a part two of this? Because I feel like we have
Yeah,
so much more to talk about.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
let's do it because we have not even scratched the surface of so many things that I want to talk about with you.
Yes.
Obviously, your fertility journey is a hard thing to even encompass in like one podcast, and there are so many other things about Samantha Busch that I want to discuss. So let's do it. Let's do a part two, and thank you so much for starting this with me.
Yes.
It's going to be well received. I know it, and I'm really excited for that. So,
Well, I
thank
appreciate
you.
it, even after all of our technical
I
difficulties.
know. Clearly, we're really tech savvy,
Yeah,
and
clearly.
our part one could have been a little longer had we figured that out sooner. But yes, let's do another one, and people can stay tuned for more with you, Samantha.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on, and I'll see you this weekend.